Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile 2 discussion. Grinding Games have today posted a patch and also some notes accompanying it. This I want to go through in this video. I'll put a link though down in the description below if you want to see Grinding Games' write-up explaining the patch and also the patch notes themselves. Today, they're talking about the things they've decided that they want to work on both now, including things that have already been done, and a number of things they're going to do in the near future. I think some of these will be universally applauded, some of them will be more contentious, and I think that a lot of people will like them, but there will be some people that preferred the way it was on day one. Let's go through them, starting with the changes that are coming to the dodge roll. Fair warning, these are not live on the server as yet. These are going to come in a future patch, and that patch is going to involve a full reboot of the servers, which means everyone will be kicked out of the game for a short period. Now, a lot of players have expressed frustration about being hemmed in and trapped by monsters. Grinding Games' intention is that this can happen, but that it's happening more often than they want it to happen at the moment. What they're doing is making two changes. The first one, player size is going to be set to 0 units when dodge rolling, instead of 1 unit. And 1 unit means 10 centimeters. So what this means is that at the moment, you need to have a gap between monsters that is at least 10 centimeters, otherwise you can't squeeze between them with a dodge roll. In the future, you just need there to be a gap at all. Need to be not actually already adjacent to each other or adjacent to you. If that's the case, you can roll through them. Otherwise, you can't. This is going to make it quite a bit easier to avoid being encircled, but once you're encircled, it's not going to save you. Secondly, some smaller monsters can be pushed aside while dodge rolling. Most importantly, this is going to include those infernal adorned beetles that are in Keth. My interpretation of this change is that it's going to apply to monsters that are the size of a house cat. It's not going to apply to monsters that are the size of a tiger, and things that are in between, you'll have to try it and find out. If you do try it and find out that you can successfully push this monster out of the way, let me know about it. If you do try to find it and fail to get out of the way, then you're not going to be able to tell anyone because your character's probably going to go splat. The next thing that comes up here is a series of checkpoint changes. Now, these are probably the single best thing in these patch notes. These address my biggest concern. I've mostly been really positive about Path of Exile 2 so far, but I do think there is one real problem with it, and that is the amount of backtracking that's involved at times. And particularly when it comes to the Sanctum and to Ultimatum. Those areas really need this tech, and they don't seem to be getting it yet. So, checkpoint changes are not live yet, but these are going to be big ones. They're going to be deploying the following change in an upcoming patch. Clicking on a checkpoint will now allow you to teleport to other checkpoints in the area, as long as those are explored on your minimap. Secondly, checkpoints will be added to all entrances and exits of zones to allow for teleportation. And thirdly, a checkpoint's being added to the midpoint of the first Dreadnought area. If you haven't found the Dreadnought yet, it's an area that you'll encounter in Act 2. They're going to be making further adjustments to checkpoint positions as they continue to gather feedback. The next section deals with some changes to itemization. These I think will be contentious but mostly well received. I expect there'll be some people that are thinking, this is a major nerf to the challenge of the game, and there'll be other people that are thinking, yep, this is exactly what I wanted to see. I think it'll be a mixed bag, but mostly positive. Let's go through the changes themselves. Firstly, rare monsters. They feel rare monsters are not dropping enough loot, not dropping loot that's commensurate with the difficulty that they can have, and as a result, they're making some buffs to rare monster loot. Now, this doesn't affect the campaign as much because in the campaign, you're encountering more unique bosses and fewer rares. In Endgame, however, you're going to be encountering more rares than uniques, and so that's going to have more of a buff to the drops in Endgame. The specific changes they're making. Rarity bonus per rare monster modifier is being doubled. There is a 10% quantity bonus per rare monster mod, and they've increased the chance of rare monsters inherently having more modifiers as you progress through Endgame. Be aware that third line, whilst intended as a loot buff, it is also a content difficulty buff at the same time. So keep that in mind. The changes will cause rare monster rewards to naturally scale up as you get to higher levels because the number of mods a rare monster can have increases throughout the campaign and into Endgame. Additionally, other forms of map juicing will indirectly cause rare monsters to have more mods as well, increasing the rewards of those mechanics too. Also note the change below to make sure each map has a minimum number of rares, which will also increase the average number of rare monster mods, and therefore increase drops further. Next is a section on currency changes. This one is going to crash the market on gem cutter prisms. Absolutely crash them. Gems cutters prisms are going to go from a jackpot drop that you get, albeit one that only the wealthier players can afford to use, into something that'll be much more mundane. Will this be a positive for players? That's just going to depend on the individual player. Some people prefer to have a longer term aspirational goal, like the old GCP setup. Some people prefer to have those goals be achieved more quickly, and, well, it looks like Grinding Gear Games are siding with the latter group. Let's go through these changes though. Regal Orb drop rates, up 40%. Disenchanting 6 mod rares will now give 2 Regal shards instead of 1. Now, if Path of Exile 2 is like Path of Exile 1, 6 mod rares are about 1 in 12 rares that drop, and this means that this is basically an 8 or 9% increase to the amount of Regal shards that you'll get. There's also a display bug attached to this one. They'll give you 2 Regal shards, but they'll only tell you they're going to give you 1. Lesser Jeweler's Orbs, the one that let you get a 4-link gem, they're going to have their drop rates increased by about a third. There is a direct nerf to the drop rate of Chaos Orbs. Now the intent here is that this is not a nerf to drop rates of currency overall. What this means is that there's a smaller pool of things that can drop, and it's more likely that if you get a currency from the tier that includes Chaos Orbs, it's more likely not to be a Chaos Orb and to be something else instead, like an Exalted Orb. Then we get the big one, Gem Cutter Prisms are having their drop rates quintupled, and the amount of them that you need in order to finish off all your gems is also being divided by 5. So quality on gems, let's say, ceases to be a super endgame goal and starts to become something that you achieve a little bit earlier in progression. Map mod changes are next, and here they're saying that they don't think that the amount of reward that's available for the difficulty that's added by map mods is quite being represented at the moment, and so they're increasing the value of all prefix map modifiers. Rarity mods are getting their values double and a halved. Quantity mods are having some extra rarity added to them, but this is not something that's applying yet. This is a future buff they're intending. The bottom tier of some mods have been removed, and you're more likely to roll modifiers, much more likely, that affect drops or pack size rather than other less useful mods. Additionally, it's been identified that some maps are not working properly with certain types of additional numbers of monster packs, and those are being worked on and fixed, but they will not be done as soon as the other changes in this list. There's a series of planned changes to prevent unlucky drops, particularly from act bosses and from endgame unique monsters. No more than 50% of the drops of a unique monster can be gold. Act bosses and map bosses will also always drop at least 1 rare. Now, I was under the impression that the act boss and map boss change had already gone live, the one about them always dropping 1 rare. I thought that was already part of the game, but maybe I was wrong and it's only gone live as of this patch, or maybe they've decided to put it in this after hotfixing it on the live servers before. The no more than 50% of a unique monster's drops can be gold is intended to be quite substantial. The reason for this is that if a unique monster drops something that is not gold, then those items have a massive boost to item rarity on them. A couple of things that this can do. Firstly, it can push an item from normal to magic, or magic to rare, or rare to unique, but it can also push a rare item up to a rare unidentified tier 2 item, or a rare unidentified tier 2 up to a rare unidentified tier 3, and these will have much higher tier mods than a rare item that generates normally. They can go all the way up to rare unidentified tier 5, but that probably requires a large amount of other juicing in order to hit. So in the future, instead of an unlucky set of drops from a unique monster being 6 piles of gold and 1 rare item, you might instead find an unlucky set of drops might instead become 3 gold piles, 2 rare items, 1 magic item, and 1 rare item tier 2 or unique item. Not necessarily something you specifically want, not necessarily something that's a boost to your character right now, but a good chance of it being one. And that's what they're going for. Next, there's a bit of a quality of life improvement to click to move, and that this is something that had been name locking before, then we're fixing it so that this can't be done. That's already been deployed. And finally, in endgame maps, they don't want a situation where players have to backtrack looking for the rare monster that they missed. And so what they're going to do is make it so that when there are 200 monsters remaining on the map, no longer 50, then rare monsters are going to start appearing on the minimap. Additionally, many maps have had rare monsters added to them to make sure there are a minimum number in every single map type, so that you don't end up going into a map and having only 2 rares there. Now, the devil is sometimes in the details, and if you have a look at the patch notes, which I'll put a link to down in the description below, you'll notice there is also a change to the drop rate of Artificer's Orbs. These are being nerfed, and the drops that were going to Artificer's Orbs there, some of them are going to be converted into Lesser Jeweler's Orbs instead. So this is mostly upside, but it will also have a downside attached to it. I'm never short of Artificer's Orbs at the moment, but that's because I'm still salvaging items that have got sockets on them. I'm sure that once I'm solidly at endgame, I'll probably stop salvaging those items, and at that point I'll be more dependent upon natural drops of Artificer's Orbs, but I'll also not likely have that much trouble getting them because it's not like you need a huge number of them. They're certainly in lower demand than Gem Cutter's Prisms on a character, and that's still the case even after the number of Gem Cutter's Prisms you need on your character to perfect it is getting nerfed with this patch. Anyways, that is patch 0.1.0c, and also the future upcoming patch that'll probably be 0.1.1 that's going to come at some point in the near future. I'm going to leave it there. May Orbs have interesting results.